Welcome back everybody to Forza Horizon 5, and today we're taking a look at the 2022 Subaru WRX. Now this is part of the second generation of the WRX, which began in 2021, and unbeknownst to me, somehow I completely forgot and never realised, the WRX name has been separated from the Impreza name ever since 2015. I think that's purely because the Impreza has now obviously been fully established as a hatchback. You could get sedan versions, but it was primarily a hatchback. So I imagine Subaru wanted another model and they wanted a saloon. So yeah, why not use the WRX name for the saloon version and the Impreza name for the hatchback version? Kind of makes sense. So yeah, but there's only one engine available for this version of the WRX, but it does have two different transmissions on the go. This has the 6-speed manual, but you can get a CVT, yeah, with the 6-speed manual you do get a viscous center differential that splits the torque 50-50, but with the CVT you get a variable torque distribution diff. So maybe that car handles a little bit better, because when it's variable torque, it means the power is going to whichever wheel has the most amount of grip. Whereas obviously when it's just a viscous center diff, it's pretty much 50-50 all of the time. But you do have open diffs front and rear for either car, despite the transmission, and as well as torque vectoring, which is done by the brake apparently. So yeah, overall in terms of the all-wheel drive, it's well sorted. I generally like the look of it, but it came across to me with all of this black accenting around the arches at the front and at the back, that it's trying to evoke a kind of a crossover kind of look, because it does look very bulky. It looks a lot taller than previous versions of either the WRX or the Impreza, and yeah, it does look a little bit more high riding. It's either due to the fact that it's actually a high riding car, or the general look of the car is trying to evoke that kind of look. But regardless, it does look overall pretty good. It's got a really rather nice interior. I will say this is the North American version of the car. You can get Japanese versions though out there, obviously sold in Japan. But yeah, this is the American version. So that's why it's left-hand drive. Got plenty of room in the rear as well. It's all nicely accompanied. It's not, a massively luxurious car, but then again, it's not, competing against the more high-powered, more expensive sports saloons out there. It's a much more modest effort. That said, it's still got a plentiful space boot, and you've got quad exhausts at the back. So you've got 4 exhausts, 4-wheel drive, 4 wheels, 4 doors, and yeah, you've also got a pretty potent engine on top of all of that. So you've now got a 2.4 litre turbocharged flat 4 engine, producing 271 horsepower and 258 pounds-feet of torque. Now that is the same amount of torque that you got in the previous generation with that base engine, but you do get 3 extra pounds-feet of torque, and you've got some engine upgrades as well. You now got a 2.4 litre over a 2 litre. You've got electronically controlled waste gate, and you've got air bypass valves as well. So yeah, it doesn't produce a massive amount of extra horsepower, but it's no doubt more economically friendly, while also having more power on the go as well. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's not a heavy car. Yes, it has nowhere near as much power as your M5s or your Mercedes AMGs, but you're still at the end of the day only dealing with 3,297 pounds. So you've got a lack of weight, you've got a fairly decent amount of power and torque, but you've also got the all-wheel drive, safety and usability for everyday basis, while also having a proper 6-speed manual gearbox as well. So no doubt this is a very fun car to drive on the day-to-day basis, but also yeah, it's probably going to be pretty capable around a track. And with it having that kind of ground clearance on the go and the all-wheel drive, you're not going to be struggling with some off-road tracks and such like that. And because obviously we've got plenty of body modifications, we can actually change the look of the car. So we can give it a slight lip spoiler, give it a proper full one, then you can give it the Forza one. Then in terms of the rear bumper, you can put this diffuser on, which basically looks like you've driven away with half of a garage's inspection pit basically. Yeah, and then we got side skirts as well. Which again, definitely going to help with your downforce there. and then obviously a new front bumper or two that you can choose from. So that's the does unlock. It also unlocks downforce as well, which is unusual. Usually these visual modifications only are visual, they're not very often that you can tune it, whereas obviously you can also always do that with the Forza front bumper. But yeah, it's nice to get a one of the body modifications where you can actually tune it as well. And yeah, like I said, I like the look of it as well. I like the fact it's still got the air scoop on the go, and yeah, just looks like a very handsome, well sorted vehicle. So yeah, but nonetheless, let's get out onto the open road and see what this car can do. Right, so here we are once again at the drag strip, so let's see what this car can do before we hit the speed camera, and then we'll get it round the track. So yeah, don't go expecting a speed machine with this. You know, it's got less than 300 horsepower, still weighs more than 3,200 pounds, but yeah, it's by no means a slow car either, and you know, for everyday driving it's got plenty full acceleration. You're never going to struggle to merge onto a highway or motorway, for instance, with this. And yeah, still got 214 mile an hour before we hit the speed camera. So yeah, bit of a dreary day though here on Forza at the moment today, but still, this car is not a dreary car in its own right. And yeah, on the whole, I like the somewhat more simple approach that this car has going on. You know, it's got a proper manual gearbox. It's not got an overly complicated engine. It's not got a large engine either, so it's going to be quite economical, I imagine. And yeah, it's practical and it looks good. And that all-wheel drive system is going to provide plenty of safety no matter what the weather conditions are. Dry, wet, snowy, you're going to be fine regardless. So yeah, let's see the car's stats before we hit the rivals mode. So yeah, we're in high-end B class, which is where a lot of these Subarus are, to be honest. And yeah, stat-wise, overall fairly good. Only braking is a letdown, which is usually the case for a car of this kind of type, but still, launch, acceleration, handling and speed are all great. Off-road capability is pretty good as well, you'd expect for an all-wheel drive car. It's just the braking that is a real issue, but I find that with a lot of modern cars on this game where the braking is the ultimate letdown. So yeah, that is a bit of a shame, but because it doesn't weigh a huge amount and yeah, you've not got a massive amount of power to deal with either, you should be able to manage the brakes fine. So yeah, there is that. I guess it's just at the end of the day a compromise between, you know, affordability, practicality and such when it comes to brakes. Usually not the most prioritised part of a car, I find. But nonetheless, let's hear what this car sounds like and then we'll talk about it some more. So yeah, the engine sounds fine. It is a boxer engine, so they're never the best sounding engines out there, but neither is it awful sounding. And yeah, it's in terms of handling, it's probably one of the easiest, reasonably quick cars out there to drive, quite frankly. It's so sedate, it's so well sorted. You've got modest oversteer at times and very minimal understeer as well, which, considering it's got 60% of its weight up front, you'd expect it to be have way more understeer than it actually does, and that's really not the case. It's really nicely balanced. Whether or not that's the case for the CVT version with its variable distribution, I don't know, but with this viscous diff it's fine. It's really well balanced, and yeah, it's more than able to handle the power, and yeah, has good cornering speed on top of all of that. Braking doesn't seem too much of an issue. Obviously I'm not pushing it massively. I imagine in a race scenario it would obviously be a bit of an issue in terms of late braking or anything like that, but just for driving on your own, it's fine. You're not going to come into any real major issues in that regard, and because obviously it doesn't have a massive amount of momentum behind it, those brakes are still not going to be overly worked. Acceleration wise, 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds, 0 to 113.8 seconds, and it went to a respectable 164 miles an hour. So yeah, that 0 to 60 time is great. 0 to 100 times a little bit on the lower side of things, but considering, you know, it's not a huge amount of power, and it still is at the end of the day you know, a practical road going vehicle, it's still reasonable enough. But that top speed is pretty good, especially when you compare it to the often electronically limited edition, limited speed on the German vehicles from the likes of Audi, Mercedes and BMW, and that is, yeah, faster than those are. And you can still have plenty of fun with it as well, as you saw there. I've got a little bit of a slide out, so despite being all-wheel drive, you can push it enough to get some fun out of it, but on the whole it's going to stick that glue to the road, and yeah, you're not going to have any real issues with it at all in that regard. So overall, a very good all-rounder, really, to be honest. There's no real downside to this car whatsoever. You've got the all-wheel drive system to keep the power in check and also keep you pointing in the right direction when the weather changes. You've got plenty of practicality, you've got good looks, you've got an interesting engine, certainly more interesting than your typical V8 or V6, and yeah, it's just a reasonably fast car that handles well as well. So yeah, no real issues at all. Can't imagine the CVT is as fun to drive, given those gearboxes are a little bit annoying, but this 6-speed manual with this amount of power and that all-wheel drive system, and the fact that it doesn't weigh a huge amount, just makes this a really rather fun all-round car to drive. And yeah, I'm glad it's on the game. So yeah, you can get this for 20 points in the current festival playlist. Easy enough to get, well worth getting, since it's a brand new car to the Forza series. And yeah, hope you enjoy it just as much as I do in terms of driving it when you get it. But nonetheless, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.